Somewhere at sea, an aircraft carrier is in a hurry. Her 4 propellers churn up a huge wake, but the rudder keeps her on a steady course. Today is a flying day, and the carrier comes alive quickly. Hours before the first launch, the flight deck is crowded. Crewmen are testing catapults, checking landing systems, getting aircraft ready to fly. 2 eager witnesses to the action are pilots Ron Hoppick and Rich Smith. Rich is the easygoing veteran of carrier flying. He has many months of sea duty behind him. Ron's the diligent newcomer, but in this business experience comes fast. Today's schedule proves it, because shortly, both men will be airborne. Ron and Rich fly the A-7 Corsair II. It's a single-engine attack bomber that carries up to 7 tons of weapons and delivers them with computer accuracy. For air crews, the flying cycle starts in the squadron ready rooms. Here they're briefed by the Air Wing Intelligence Officer on closed-circuit TV. He discusses general items like weather and the ship's location, and assigns missions to each of the carrier's 10 squadrons. Now it's Ron's turn to brief, because on this flight he's going to lead a formation of 2 A-7s. He outlines formation and navigation procedures with the other pilots, and especially with Craig Himmel on his left, because this morning Craig will be his wingman. Less than an hour until the launch, and the flight deck activity has hit high gear. This includes loading practice bombs on the A-7s. They're not explosive, but they do have smoke charges, so they're carefully checked. Pilots heading for their flight gear are often as boisterous as a football team suiting up for a tough playoff game. It's the same casual camaraderie, a group of professionals facing a challenging match, and looking forward to it. In this case, though, the football pads are parachute harnesses, and the jerseys are survival vests. Altogether about 30 pounds of flight gear. The mood is all business again when the players head out to their steel gridiron. 30 minutes until the launch, and there's a brief lull while everyone waits for the air crews. As they reach the deck, they're pleased to see that the weather brief was right. It's a beautiful day to fly. But they don't waste time enjoying the sunshine. The carrier flight deck is a dangerous arena. The safest place for a pilot is in his plane. Ron is met by his plane captain, whose job is making sure the jet's ready to fly. Like any pilot, Ron gives his aircraft a pre-flight check. But even so, he knows that his plane captain has already thoroughly inspected it. He's been working on it since dawn, with dozens of aircraft mechanics and technicians in the squadron backing him up. When they're at sea, the crewmen work 12-hour shifts day and night to keep the aircraft ready to fly, and some are standing by right now to make quick repairs. High-pressure air from a starter unit gets the jet engine spinning. Now a new series of checks begins. First, Ron cycles the flight controls. Then he operates all the auxiliary systems, including the launch bar, emergency generator, the air-to-air refueling probe. The routine is quick and thorough, and it reassures Ron that every system checked on deck should work properly in the air. First in the sky today is an SH-3 helicopter. Its job is rescue, and it'll be airborne while anyone else is flying. And this is not a robot. It's the catapult control station. On this carrier, the catapult officer directs the launch from inside it. Thumbs up from Ron's plane captain tells him he's ready. The salute means thanks for a job well done. And this means get set to taxi. All the pre-launch activity has the variety of a 3-ring circus, and like a circus, the flight deck has a ringmaster. Above the bridge, in his own glass booth, is the air boss. He doesn't crack a whip, but he does have radios and intercoms to keep his show moving. As the launch approaches, his performers take their positions. The rescue helicopter circles close enough to get to a downed flight crew in seconds. Planes ease onto all 4 catapults, and others line up behind them. With everything ready, The boss gives the order that gets the show off the deck. Now the flight deck tempo becomes a disciplined hustle. Catapult 2 is clear, and the taxi director guides the next plane into position. The pilot is Craig, Ron's wingman, and as he eases his A-7 up to the catapult, the jet blast deflector is raised behind him. Without it, his exhaust would sweep the flight deck like a tornado. In seconds, Ron is on his way to a catapult, while several acrobatic technicians give the plane a final check. He doesn't notice. His eyes are locked on the director. Inside the catapult control station, the CAT officer supervises the show. He'll be pushing the launch button, so he makes sure the plane's launch bar follows the groove that guides it into the catapult shuttle. Ron's last signal: full power. The salute says, "I'm ready to fly," even if Ron is still amazed that a 300-foot runway is long enough for a 17-ton airplane. In just a few heartbeats, the catapult proves it again. Wheels up, engine checked, navigation instruments set. Ron's ready for the mission. Looking straight ahead, Ron sees the head-up display reflecting back at him. The picture is computer-controlled, and it shows him he's in a left turn. The turn keeps him circling, and for a good reason. His wingman, Craig, has spotted him, and he's using the turn for a controlled join-up. Tactical Navy planes often fly in groups of 2 or more. This buddy system lets them support each other on tactics and navigation, and it develops plenty of skill in flying precise formation. A broad blue sky is a thrilling highway. The pilots savor it as they proceed on their first mission. The assignment: long-distance navigation. They must fly to a distant destination without using any outside radio aids. No problem for the Corsair. It has an inertial navigation system that constantly tracks its own position, and when the pilot keys in a destination, it tells him how to get there. When they reach land, Ron radios Craig that they'll simulate a threat from enemy fighters. For Craig, it means pulling away to a wider position. This puts eyes to the rear, where an attacker would probably come from, because now each can see behind the other. When they reach their destination, Ron checks the computer and turns back to the ship. At the coast, he signals Craig to detach. They'll be doing the next mission separately. Over water, their roles change to bad guys. Their goal: find the carrier with radar and attack it, without being intercepted by the good guys, the fighters. But Ron's already been spotted. An F-14 fighter has simulated shooting a missile, and he'll try again from behind. Ron starts a defensive move, but chances are it's too late. If the F-14's done its job in a real fight, Ron would be riding a parachute by now, if he were lucky. For his own training, Ron continues the attack. He ducks low on the water to avoid radar and accelerates for surprise. It's an old-fashioned bombing run with a new technological twist. The computer will drop the bombs. He turns on the attack mode, and the head-up display shows him the symbols he'll use in the bombing run. When Ron's in range, he pulls back on the flight controls, and his speed rockets him up through several thousand feet in seconds. As he rolls level, the plane enters a dive, and he changes his target from the carrier to a point in the wake well aft. That's where he'll drop the practice bombs. He guides a head-up display symbol on top of his aim point and signals the computer to memorize that spot. Now the computer gives the directions. It calculates wind, speed, and dive angle, and tells Ron which way to steer. At the right instant, it drops the bombs. That mission's over. Ron is a good guy again, and he circles back to the ship. A carrier's outline is bold and distinct, and her aircraft form a sharp, purposeful pattern against the gray deck. To a carrier aircrew, there's not a prettier sight in the ocean. When the flight joins up again, Craig takes the lead, and the pilots prepare for homecoming by dropping their tailhooks, the proud and unique gesture of carrier airplanes. On the ship, the last plane in the second launch is airborne, and there's a scramble to get ready for the recovery. This is also the air boss's domain, and one of his concerns is the landing lens. It's located on the left side of the landing area, and pilots watch it during their approaches for guidance to the precise touchdown spot. If they come in too high, they'll see a yellow light, nicknamed the ball, rise above a row of green lights. If their approach is low, the ball will fall below the green lights. The solution is obvious, but not easy. Fly a glide slope that keeps the ball centered. A special audience is gathering for the recovery, the landing signal officers, or LSOs. While Craig leads the flight over the ship and into the landing pattern, the LSOs station themselves on a platform near the landing area. Their job is critical. Make sure every approach is safe. Craig starts a sharp turn back to the ship, which slows him enough to drop his landing gear. Flight deck attention starts to focus on him when he lines up behind the carrier. Most interested are the LSOs. The hook catches, and the flight's over in 300 feet. Over but not forgotten, the LSOs give it a grade. Now the stage belongs to Ron. He's oblivious to his audience, but there are lots of eyes on him. His concentration has narrowed to the glide slope, signaled by the yellow ball level with the green, and the quick, precise adjustments he must make to stay on it. Some call it a controlled crash. Not a bad description. How well it was controlled is judged again by the LSOs, and the grade goes in their famous little book. As Ron taxis towards the cluster of planes on the bow, the thick steel cable that yanked him to a stop is reset. There are 4 of them connected to huge arresting gear engines beneath the deck. They reset quickly, but if the next plane arrives too soon, the LSOs give him a wave-off signal. He jams his throttle to full power and circles around for another approach. With the engine winding down, Ron's job is done. He gets ready to give the jet back to the plane captain, while the last plane in the recovery gets lassoed to a stop. Returning aircrews are often preoccupied with the flight's events. As they meet, they compliment each other on the things that went well, and critique the things that could have gone better. When they leave the flight deck, it belongs once again to the crews that'll repair, reload, and refuel the aircraft for the next launch. When the pilots get together for the debrief, the first topic is traditionally the landings. Everyone insists that his was either great or terrible, and hopes that it was at least average. The truth will soon be out, though. Every landing is videotaped, and the replay usually settles part of the argument. Landings are a carrier pilot's pride. They're the one skill that's unique to carrier flying. But no matter how good it looks on the videotape, the last word belongs to the LSO. After the recovery, he visits each pilot and reviews his approach in detail, sometimes in pantomime. He's a coach with a critical eye, and he translates what he's seen into firm advice on how to improve the next landing. The critique may not flatter a pilot, but he listens. Throughout the day, the flying cycles continue. Hundreds of crewmen perform thousands of duties to get ready for the next roar of a catapult and scream of a jet. In most places, this means end of the day. Wrap up the job, head home. But to a working carrier, it just means it's time to turn on a few lights. The flight deck action doesn't slow down a bit. For Rich Smith, suiting up for a night flight is pretty much routine. But unlike daytime, the mood is subdued. Night flying is different. Darkness hides easy clues to altitude and distance and orientation. Technology makes it safe. Nevertheless, he and his wingmen know that tonight's mission will demand their full attention, and they anticipate a night landing as a key test of their carrier flying skills. The dim glow of a few island lights is all that welcomes the aircrews to the flight deck. But there's the same job to do, and it starts again with pre-flight inspections of the planes. It takes a lot of faith to follow taxi signals when a pilot can't see the side of the deck. But it takes the most faith to follow this one. A bright moon spoils a carrier pilot, makes it easy to figure out up from down. But tonight, Rich ends up under clouds. As he performs his mission, his best friends are his instruments. Homecoming is deceptive. A few red lights are the only clues that there's a carrier below. But at recovery time, the air boss orders the landing lights turned on, and the reassuring outlines of the landing area and the lens are etched in the blackness. First in the landing parade is an F-14. It's the same challenge as daytime to fly on the center line and keep the ball centered. The difference? Those are the only clues. Sparks fly when his hook hits the deck. In seconds, he's taxied out, and attention goes to the following A-7. Now it's Rich's turn. He's probably thinking, thanks for tailhooks. He doesn't take a deep breath, though, until he gets this signal. You're home, and you're tied to the deck. Shut her down. The strongest drink you'll find on a Navy ship is coffee, so the night debrief starts at the coffee pot. It's a muted conversation. Both pilots are still unwinding from 2 hours of airborne concentration. But the LSO will be in shortly to debrief the landings. Rich heads for the monitor to watch the replay. At night, his plane is just a few lights on a gray screen. Not bad. The LSO should like it. But even as the thrill of the flight wears off, the satisfaction lingers. Satisfaction at contributing your best effort to the special business of going to sea. And it doesn't stop. The night crews are already moving the planes for tomorrow's first launch. And the carrier is steaming for waters where there are new missions for the men and the aircraft of the Tailhook Navy.